that the next government, whichever government Canadians choose, will be in the best possible position for negotiations with the United States, which, as the President and I have agreed, will begin from the start of May.
Uh-oh, we should have known back then that he was in way over his head already when it came to dealing with the United States. So the Liberal government is in crisis mode, trying to get ahead of this catastrophe ever since Trump signaled that he was not going to renew USMCA. But sadly, he sent the worst possible person to go do damage control. I'll let you guess who that is before I show you. So Canada Day came and went, but the footage that is coming out from the celebration is shocking, and it shines a light on a very real problem. What happens to a nation when you deliberately let its culture decay through mass migration? My name is Eli Daniel, and this is The Right Call. Like, share, subscribe, hype this video up. Any interaction on this channel helps push the truth out, and maybe someday help break that CBC-induced coma that so many Canadians are under. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button, because if you like the truth, you found the right place. Boy, I'm getting some color, ain't I, eh? A little bit of tanning here and there, and there comes the tan. But anyway, stick around. You don't want to miss this, because grim news once again.
You know, foreign countries do not go into other countries and do political ads, advocating for certain candidates, especially during an election season. Canada decided to do that in the United States. As far as I can tell, and I've talked to historians and all of that, it's probably the first time in American history that a foreign country came into the United States of America and tried to influence our politics and our policies through electioneering.
Yeah, what the hell was Dougie Ford thinking about when he ran that ad into the US? I called it out right away, and I thought it was the stupidest thing ever. But anyways, this is US Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, whom I had the chance to meet. And during our lunch, this is one thing that kept coming up, and one thing that was very clear to me. It's not so much Carney that the US has an issue with, although they clearly, I think Carney is in way over his head, and he's outclassed as a negotiator by Trump. However, the real sticking point, the real points of friction, is actually what has been done by Doug Ford. The removing alcohol from the shelves, the running that silly Ronald Reagan ad inside the United States, and the fact that Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, is not reining in one of the premiers of one of our provinces is what is irritating the US. It just doesn't show a serious nation. It doesn't show that you have control as a prime minister over your provinces. And yes, I get it. Provinces are autonomous in many regards. But nonetheless, how is Carney allowing this to happen without backlash, without scolding, without even putting pressure on Ontario? Is beyond me. But speaking about how Carney is outclassed, outmatched in this negotiation with the US.
Having some discipline on reminding folks how valuable it is. There really is no other choice. What I'll say is that the countries that are led by serious leaders, and I'll say President Sheinbaum is a serious leader in Mexico. When we came in and we were talking, and Ambassador Greer was just there, we're talking to Mexico about this, and the President has spoken to, directly about this. They have been very serious. Look, we know the United States is our most important economic partner, that it is the policy of President Sheinbaum that the United States and Mexico will have a positive economic relationship, and that we know that we'll have some friction and we'll have to figure it out, but we're going to figure it out, right? This is the bottom line. There are other economies who decided to make it personal, and I think Carney has made it personal. I think it's political malpractice for the Prime Minister of a Canadian, of Canada to pit politically himself against any president. I don't care what the president is, who the president is, what party they represent. It's political malpractice. Canada is dependent upon the U.S. economy. That's just a fact, right? That's not hubris. That's not something that Canada needs to be concerned about. It's not something Canada can change, right? The fundamental fact is geography wins out. Canada is located where it's located. They can't move shop. They can have a weak economy that is underperforming and not doing well, and Carney can feel superior, or they can have an economy that participates as a partner of the U.S. economy, and Carney can do what a grown-up should do, which is figure it out, and come like President Sheinbaum and decide that the United States and Canada will have a positive economic relationship. It's my job as a person who's supposed to protect Canadian jobs, Canadian citizens, and the Canadian economy to not let my ego and my feelings dictate what's best for my own economy.
So that's the issue. When the US recognizes the fact that a deal with them is actually more beneficial for our country than our own prime minister realizes there's a problem. There's someone's mismatched, misclassed, and clearly doesn't have the best interests of Canadians at heart. So Pete Hoekstra, the US ambassador to Canada, says there's been no significant progress in the last 14 months of trade negotiations, but the US is going to keep talking. Hopefully on a number of these issues, we reach a resolution sooner rather than later, he says. Take a second to recognize how ludicrous it is that it's been 14 months and there's been no advancement. As a matter of fact, it appears that Canada has completely reneged on their duty to negotiate. They've been running away, which again makes you wonder why. If I speculate, again, I know Carney wants to get close to China. I know there's some personal ties there, and I can speculate on that. But if I go more a mainstream route, it appears that Canada tried to put all of its chips on we will diversify our trade and we can replace the US. Sadly, again, that is hubris, that is ludicrous, that is fantasy. It's utopic. You can't do that. And if Canada doesn't come to a trade deal very, very soon, well, the US ambassador let us know a little bit what we could expect. Hoekstra said that 85% of trade between the two countries that take place under USMCA will carry on tariff-free, and that's the arrangement that is predictable. He also said that the US is putting tariffs on things not covered by USMCA, which demonstrates that the Trump admin is predictably following the rules of the existing deal, which to me is a little bit of an undertone of what happens when the deal expires is, well, you can expect the same tariffs now to be applied to all the goods. I think it's a little bit of a preview, a foreshadowing of sorts, and that's why we need to figure it out sooner rather than later. Because right now, the strategy seems to be to squeeze Canada into submission by making a bilateral deal with Mexico, singling out Canada and thus removing the leverage we might have had we shown a unified front with Mexico while negotiating with the US. And President Sheinbaum seems more than happy to put the interests of Mexico first instead of rescuing Canada. And you know what? I don't blame her. Even the EU is starting, albeit very slowly, to prioritize itself. This was announced today that Canada Post was stopping parcel delivery to some EU countries because of a new duty. Low-value shipments from outside the EU bloc now faces a €3 duty. It's not a big deal, but it just goes to show the EU is starting to prioritize its own economy, putting duties on Canadian imports. And see, that's exactly the current problem that Canada fails to understand, or is just too hard-headed to realize. Trump is done letting America get the shorter end of the stick. Whether it's in defense with NATO and all the countries that are not pulling their weight and investing as much as they should, or in trade with the US being the biggest buyer of the world's goods, but not deriving the same value coming from other countries. He's simply straightening out a perceived imbalance for the benefits of the country he leads. It's what America First is all about. And Canada ought to do the same right here, right now. Yes, it's good to diversify your economy. I've said this many times before.
Real decisions that we're taking as a government to protect jobs and create jobs across the country. And today is the very example of this, because this business is ground zero for the tariffs that are affecting so many steelworkers. This business, 18 months ago, 80% of its business was linked to sending and exporting to the US. And now it's at 55%. Why? Because it's working with Hydro Quebec and working to make sure that it's building the right transmission line, the right infrastructure to ultimately be able to have a strong economy and a strong energy sector. This is just an example. We're investing in that company. We're creating 100 jobs. And so that's our goal. We'll continue to do so. I know that everybody is watching what's going on the trade front between Canada and the US. We have a good team, we have a good plan, and we'll continue to make sure that we have people's back.
Oh man, we're really sending out our A-team, the most accomplished of ministers, to help the local economy. So that's who I was talking about earlier. Melanie Joly, that's who we sent to damage control and help out our local companies. And see, this isn't something that inspires confidence at all, and it's definitely not the flex she thinks it is. 80% of this steel business was linked to trade with the United States. Now it's down to 55%. So where did the rest go? Hydro Quebec, a crown corporation. So Melanie Joly's brilliant plan is to replace trade with the US by having a crown corporation pick up the difference? I mean, it doesn't take a genius to realize that this is not sustainable. And this actually ends up being just another burden on Quebec taxpayers, who in this case are picking up the tab. Instead of bringing in US dollars from outside of the country to our country, effectively importing wealth, we are recycling Canadian dollars paid by Canadian taxpayers within the economy to prop up a business because of her government's failure in trade policies. And that's what's so ludicrous, to think that we can replace the United States this quickly, or ever, when they represent 75% of our entire economy. It's foolish. I've said this before, but You know, Canada has a golden opportunity. We've had a golden opportunity all this time because we're conjoined at the hips with the world's largest consumer market. But we just have to get out of our own way. And step number 1 would be dropping this net zero policy.
We have secured a commitment to keep the northern tanker ban firmly in place, protecting British Columbia's pristine northern coast and the $2 billion plus economy that relies on it.
So the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, seems to have been bamboozled in the MOU that she signed with Carney, something that we all predicted, because Carney and Eby agree to keep oil tanker ban, which means that how are we going to get that oil now flowing to the West Coast to be exported out of Canada? Well, we're going to have to build a new pipeline. And initially, we wanted it to take a specific northern route. It was the fastest, it was the bestest. Now we can't do that. First Nations are blocking it. EB's keeping the tanker ban in place. We just can't get out of our own way. We're not a serious nation.
Again, Canada is a logical supplier for that. We've got the infrastructure, both in pipelines. We've got the infrastructure and business relationships working together. We think Alberta might be the ideal place to get and fill those requirements, fill those needs that we believe that we have. But at the same time, if we can't strike a deal with Alberta, we will go to other places in the world and we'll find other sources of oil.
We might very well lose our biggest customer of oil because we can't get out of our own way. We can't figure out our own crap at home. And I'm going to piss a lot of people off by saying this, but sadly, First Nations have done more harm to our economic development than America ever could. They are happy to take $38 billion a year plus several other $1 billion in court settlement from the federal government, which represents 12% of our entire budget, but oppose every economic prosperity building project that crosses their path. So they want our money, but it won't help build the economic prosperity required to sustain this free cash cow of theirs. If you want to block every economic projects, then don't expect money from us. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And it's time that Canada puts its foot down once and for all. Instead of blaming the US for all of its shortcomings, maybe we need a little bit of introspect.
Every generation of Canadians inherits something that was built by the generations before.
Yeah, with you it's going to be debt, a side of woke ideologies, maybe a little Islamic call to prayer, and definitely mass migration for those Tim Hortons.
A railway. A seaway.
A Brookfield way.
If you could only invest in one thing today, what would it be?
Well, if I could only invest in one thing, I'd invest in our transition fund.
In a transition fund.
Yeah, not a transition fund.
Your transition fund, sorry.
Brookfield Global Transition Fund.
Charter of Rights.
Oh, right, the Charter of Rights, the one that you've completely undermined by passing Bill C-9, criminalizing speech and sending people up to life in prison for posts online and quoting the Bible, or is it C-22? The one that gives access to all of our online data and mandates companies to put backdoor entry into our devices so that your government can spy on us without a warrant. That Charter of Rights?
A path towards reconciliation.
Reconciliation. I'll accept reconciliation the second we start actually digging up the bodies they say are buried underneath residential schools. Until then, I think we're just being bamboozled.
A country that's more prosperous, more just, more inclusive than the one they inherited from their parents.
Well, we're about to leave Canada poorer than ever before. The first generation, the first time in history, actually, that a generation inherits less than their parents. I'm not talking about money inherited from parents. I'm talking about wealth and prosperity and a brighter tomorrow.
This work is born from the conviction that Canada is worth fighting for.
So if Canada is worth fighting for, why don't we have a deal with the US?
That Canada belongs to all Canadians, that Canada's best days are yet to come.
If Canada belongs to all Canadians, then please explain to me why over 25% of our population is foreign-born, is landed immigrants, and why we, at the tune of nearly 2% per year, import new permanent residents, new temporary foreign workers, and new visa holders. Is it because Canada belongs to all Canadians, or is it because Canada needs to be, replaced?
These convictions were forged across generations, and they're being renewed by this generation.
Clearly, he wasn't talking to my generation, because millennials, Gen Zs, and my son's generation, Gen Alpha, are going to be left with a really hefty tab to make sure that all those liberal policies of the last decade and the liberal policies of yesteryears are continued to be propped up. So one of those liberal policies that is sadly incredibly destructive to the nation, and something that the West in general is facing, it's a lack of nationalism. Elected officials getting into office and prioritizing the needs and well-being of other nations, or worse, of foreigners within our own borders. And that at the cost of the well-being, the cohesion, and the prosperity of our own nation.
As we mark 250 years, what do we see?
Well, I clearly don't see many Americans in that room. Sure, you're holding the flag, but...
We see a city of contradictions within a nation of contradictions. We see the wealthiest country in the history of the world, one where children go to sleep hungry, while the world's first trillionaire hungers for more. We see monopolies that dominate every industry and oligarchs who buy elections. We see masked agents terrorizing our streets, eating food cooked by our undocumented neighbors before spiriting them away in unmarked vans.
You know, in almost every corner of the United States, they're celebrating 250 years of strength, victory, leadership, and freedom. But in New York, under the Champagne socialist mayor Mamdani, they're dealing with electoral failures and hearing BS about open borders, being lectured, as a matter of fact, by someone who clearly hates the United States on what the United States should stand to be. And that's exactly the problem I'm talking about. We have elected officials who hate their own nation and put the needs and the priorities of others above their own citizens. And closer to home, during Canada Day, we witnessed what policies that prioritize foreigners over our own domestic tranquility leads to.
That's there, you can talk after the event. This is not the right time.
So I came here to celebrate Canada with my girls. We're Indigenous. We're Métis, we're Cree, we're Lakota,
I
okay?
respect you.
Okay,
You share
great.
your land.
Ooh, imagine that, a old stock Indian fighting with a new stock Indian. I really wonder who wins the oppressed award in this instance.
With us.
We share our land. We don't treat our land like this. All of you should be ashamed. Pick up some garbage. No, you're not. Look at all the garbage everywhere. It doesn't work that way. We don't wait till the event's over, because what happens if the rain comes in the rain comes in, the wind picks up, all this garbage gets picked up.
I'm going to spare you the rest of this video. It's 5 minutes of this First Nation woman ripping into these Indians who have been trashing the entire place, and the Indians finding every deflection in the book to say that no, they were going to pick it up. We know they weren't going to pick it up. Again, you just got to take a look at your own country for a second to realize that, you know, that's not the way they treat places.
This is how we treat Canada on Canada Day, apparently. Like, I cannot believe the state of this park on Canada Day. This is absolutely horrific to me.
Well, you know the saying, import it, you become it. And even closer to home for me, I realized something that struck me deeply. Every year for Canada Day, the city I'm in hosts a firework show in a big park by the water. It is something that I have been going to every year of my life, ever since I was a little boy. And now the tradition is being carried on with my little boy. So this year, I brought him to the park for the fireworks. And here's what struck me. Huge dump trucks being used to blockade all the access roads to the park. Massive concrete barricades being put within the park, within the roads in the park, to prevent the motion and the movement of cars. And it got me thinking, why wasn't it like that when I was a young boy? The roads were open, people were smiling, there was very little security in place. Things were peaceful, orderly, clean. But when I looked around today, realizing that I was not surrounded by the same kind of people whom used to celebrate around me as a little boy, it got me thinking, is this what we want Canada to become? We went from a high-trust society where we didn't need these security measures to now a society where cities have to invest tremendously more in security and have to make everyone feel, and this did not make me feel safer, it made me feel like, wait a second, are we expecting a terrorist attack here? And you wonder why. What changed in Canada over those last 3 decades? I'm 34. So what's changed over the last 3 decades? Well, the makeup of the country changed. We started allowing a lot of individuals. You know, immigration is not an issue. I'm not against immigration. We were never against immigration. We just wanted the best in Canada for Canada to be the best. It's like building a hockey team. You want the best players. But today, we don't do that anymore. We just let the team be filled up with anyone who chooses to come in. And sadly, they bring with them some bad elements. Not all of them. There's plenty of amazing people. But there are bad elements. And I like to use the analogy of the apples. If you had a bucket of apple with 30 apples in it, 10 red, 10 green, and 10 yellow. And if I told you that 3 of the green apples were poisonous, if you bite into it, you die. Would you eat the green apples? Would you still take your odds? Your chances are good. Your odds are good, but would you still take them, or would you just focus on the red and the yellow apples until you can put in place a system to, without a shadow of a doubt, ascertain which green apples are poisonous and which one are not? Now apply that to our country. And while we're on the topic of bad hombres, how about we meet the liberal parasitic class, because that exists. What you're looking at is a graph that shows how much pollsters have gotten paid over the years. And this is IPSOS, ECOS, Leger, Earnscliffe. And as you can see, as soon as we hit the liberal era, things start changing very rapidly in terms of federal contracts going to these pollsters. They are making a killing, up 163% over the last decade. In numbers, from 2000 to 2015, these 4 polling companies received $28.9 million in contracts from the federal government. But from 2015 to 2025, the last decade of liberal government, they've received nearly $74 million, 163% more. And this is why I call them the liberal parasitic class. They feed off the liberals, consultants, the media, lobbyists, pollsters. This is the liberal club that Pierre Poilievre described that you're not part of. They get rich off your money while you sadly just get the bill shoved in your face. And they have every incentive in the book to ensure the liberals stay in power. Now you understand why the game is rigged, why the deck is stacked. Because the second the liberals are out of power, you have this entire class of parasites that lose all their wealth. And sadly, they are the power brokers of Canada. The media controls the narrative and the information that most Canadians get fed. The pollsters get to reinforce this and undermine any opposition. The consultants, well, they go into government and they consult at the tune of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars with no accountability for their bad decisions. And the lobbyists, well, the lobbyists ensure that the oligarchs of this country continue to get rich while you, as a consumer, suffer. Now, if you've enjoyed this report and would like to find a way to get yourself involved with this channel, aside from liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, and doing all that good stuff, hyping the video up as well if you got some left, it is Friday after all, but if you want to take it a step further and you want to help financially, help me spend more time researching, drafting, recording, and putting out as much info as we can in order to counteract this CBC narrative, those liberal parasitic narrative, well, I have a Patreon. The link is in the description. I also have a PayPal if you rather just do a one-time donation, any amount. A couple dollars to a couple $100. Sometimes you guys surprise me. It's mind-blowing. Is so greatly appreciated. Just don't end up going to the food bank. For that, please prioritize yourself. Very important. Now, also, if you want to understand a little bit more what's been happening after President Trump decided to exit USMCA, I made a video right here. I break it down. I think it's very important for all of you to understand what we are facing. But for the time being, my name is Elliot Daniel, and I'm going to go enjoy the weekend. I hope you do as well. I'll see you next week.